attended my SharePoint 2 training session, you learned all about working with columns in your document libraries. So the example that we used was a collaboration folder where we added a couple of columns here to give us something to sort and filter by. So you could have used any of these, but in the training we did person and yes or no. So with these additional columns, it made our life a lot easier to be able to sort and filter by something that was really relevant to us. In this case, this example was a collaboration folder. I decided to add the names of the owners of the files and whether or not they have completed their assignment. The problem with these columns is that this is applied at the library level. So even though I'm in a folder called collaboration, and this is really going to help me stay organized, this is actually going to be applied to everything in this document library, including any other folders or files that have nothing to do with collaboration. The solution we looked at in our training session was to create a second document library. Because columns are applied at the library level, this might be one reason that you create multiple libraries for one SharePoint site. But there's another solution that I'm really excited to show you, and it is called content types. Now, once you have incorporated content types into a document library, it's going to give you almost a temporary view of those columns. So looking at this same document library here, I've made a content type called collaboration that I can apply this to, and it almost is like I'm temporarily allowed to view these columns and can pull it back out of view. So that's what I'm excited to show you today, because if you're creating multiple libraries just because you want to have different column structures, this might be another solution for you. So let's get into it. My first task will be to create a content type with those two columns that I want to be able to apply. So I'm going to head over to my site settings, and remember there's a couple of ways to get there. I'm going to go through my site contents and go up to site settings in the upper right. Another way to get there is to go to your settings gear in the upper right, go to site information, and view all site settings. These will both take you to the same place. In my site settings, I'm looking for site content types. So look for a section called Web Designer Galleries. If your SharePoint site is a team type of SharePoint site, this will be on the right side of your screen. If your SharePoint site is a communications type site, look right where this site actions appear on my screen. So it'll be in one of these two places. And again, you're looking for site content types. Now, content types already exist on your site. These come stock with your site, and each of these content types come with some different metadata and information to go along with whatever the content is you're working with. So you don't need to worry about what's here already. We're really interested in creating our own. So I'm going to look for Create Content Type. And I'm going to give this a name. In my case, this is going to be applied to my goal of collaboration. So I'm going to call this collaboration. You can call it whatever you'd like. I'm going to keep this default. I want this to be a custom content type. That's what I'm creating. I'm creating my own content type that I want to apply that's outside of the default templates. I am going to select a parent content type because this is going to help get me started. It's going to give me a starting place for the content type I'm creating. So in my case, I'm working with documents. So I think what I'm going to do is click on this drop down here right next to parent category. I'm going to select a document content type. And under content type, I'm going to select document. I'm really interested in this for my document structure, so this will be a good starting place. So I'm going to click create. So here is my default information for my new collaboration content type. Comes with a name and title, and I can add additional columns here. So I'm just going to keep this the same as my original goal, and I'm going to add a person column that's for the owner of the file, and I'm going to add a yes or no column for whether or not this has been completed. So I'm going to add a site column, create new site column, and I'm going to call this file owner. And if I look down at the bottom of this right-hand flyout menu, select from column type. These are the same column types we looked at during training. They look a little bit different, but it's the same stuff. You've got your text, number, yes, no, person, etc. I'm making my yes or no column next, And in this case, we had selected during training yes or no and made the default value no, but that's going to really depend on what your goal is for that yes or no column. These are going to give you the same options that you saw during training for different column type options. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that if you're trying to title your column something that's already being used in another content type, you might get an error. So I tried to create a column called completed. There's already something called completed in another content type. So you may have to alter your wording a little bit for what you title your columns. Okay, so once you've added any columns that you want to be able to work with, you can go back to your document library and apply these content types. So let's do that next. Okay, I am back in my document library and I'm going to go as if I'm going to add a column. So I'm going to be adding a column just like I did before, but I'm going to scroll all the way down to add a content type. Click next. This is where I'm going to see my custom content type options, and I created that new one called collaboration. I'm going to click apply. And what I'll need to do is actually decide which of my files are going to apply to that content type. So in my case, I'm going to just do it to both files in this folder. But remember, this document library, just like we did in training, has several folders in it, and I'm sure yours will have even more than this. So I'm going to select each of these files and apply that content type to it. So selecting that radio button just to the left of the files, looking for my details pane, which I can get to from this small letter I in the upper right. And I'm going to apply that content type of collaboration. Right now they're documents, but I want to make them collaboration content types. See how that's bringing in these additional values. So I'm going to click Save. Now when I go to the details for either document, I'm going to see, just like we did in training, we kind of scrolled down and looked at all these different values. Now I've got the option to add the file owner, add whether or not the document has been completed with that yes or no option there. And even though I don't see the columns here, I'm going to have a new view setting. So in the upper right, where I've got all documents listed here, I can now narrow this down to collaboration, and look at what that does. That brings in my columns. So I can see these new columns that have been created. I can sort and filter by them. And it's almost like it's a targeted filter by that content type that shows you temporarily those columns. So when I'm done with this view, I can go right back where I was a second ago, up here in the upper right, click on the drop down where it now says collaboration, move it back to all documents. Now I do want to mention, you did apply, just like any other column, when you added those content types, you did apply this to this whole document library. So theoretically, someone could be in the wrong folder and they could go up here and try to narrow down by collaboration. But if that content type hasn't been applied to the files, it's not really going to bring anything up anyway. So this is still done at the library level, but if your only reason for creating multiple document libraries is that you wanted to have specialized columns, this might be a good solution for you. So if you're a fan of columns in your document libraries, I hope this was a useful trick to help keep you organized.